All right, Bridget McCutchen, you are on Driven to Ride. Hello.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
I know that you've gotten a lot of attention for what you've done and accomplished. And again, as a fellow Midwesterner, I can understand it's a lot, I imagine. So
It is. Sometimes it's very foreign because, like you said, not a lot happens in the Midwest, and people in the Midwest think when someone in the Midwest is like, "Wow, that's a lot," it's maybe not a lot for the rest of the world.
yeah.
But yeah, it's sometimes I don't think I forget, but I sort of it isn't present in my mind, and then I'll think about it again, and I'm like, oh, right.
Yeah, like an LA or New York, like 5 is probably like a Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan 11. So
yes.
in terms of attention and fame and all that. And but let's start right from the beginning. What do people know you for? What is your claim to fame?
Well, I guess the motorcycle trip. So, I've never thought about it this way before. My claim to fame is being the youngest person to go around the world on a motorcycle. And I'll put an asterisk there and say officially. So yeah, that's a very recent development. I started the trip in August of 2020, and then I ended it in, what was it, November 4th of 2023. And yeah, that's what I did. Many continents, many countries. I think there was 45 countries. And then there was 1, 2, 3, 4 continents.
Not bad.
Someone was like, actually, these are 2 separate continents. I'm like, oh, okay. So I got another continent for free.
Hey, there you go. Well, yeah. So yeah, the youngest person, and also I believe you are another title too. You set another record with that.
Well, so I've broken the record for youngest person, and I've set the record for youngest woman. So as far as I know, there is no other young women that have done what I've done in, like, because Guinness has all these requirements and whatnot. There is, to my knowledge, no one else that has done it, finished as young as I have, and done precisely what I did. So officially. That's pretty cool. Yes.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. Well, first, congratulations. Like you said, it was 18 months?
I think 18. It was a year and months.
over 1 under 2 years. Yeah, let's put it that way. So
it was I think 450 days. I remember the 400.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a significant amount of time. So it's not like you can just jump on the bike and head down to the store. It's a little more involved than that. So
a little bit, just a little.
Yeah, but let's go back even further a little bit. How did you even get into motorcycling? What started your motorcycle, experience?
So I started. Well, my family started. That was where it came from. So let me adjust this really quick. There we go. That feels better. So my oldest brother, Michael, got a motorcycle when I was really young. I think before the double digits, the double numbers. And because that's what he didn't have a car. He just had a motorcycle. And so he would ride that everywhere. In winter, and like we were talking about before, Wisconsin winters are rough. And he was an engineer, and he had this sidecar that he built for it. And that's how he would get around, is he would just bundle up. He didn't have any heated gear or anything.
Wow. He just went for it.
Yeah, he just bundled the hell up and would ride around. And he would, he went down to Minnesota in winter and all this stuff. And that's how he would get to work. So he did that. And then my older brother, Thomas, got a crotch rocket. I think his first bike was a Ninja 250. I think it was one of the newer models.
Mm-hmm.
And it was bright red.
Nice.
As one does.
Right.
And then sort of from there, like Thomas sort of stayed into motorcycles. Michael sort of got out of it. But then all of my siblings got motorcycles.
Oh, wow.
And I think I was the last of the siblings that currently have motorcycles to get one, which is irony right there. But it just sort of been like my dad has one, and it's not like, it was all just transport. It wasn't like motorcycle adventure. Michael sort of did some of that, and Thomas definitely did. Thomas went to South America on his motorcycle. Okay. Yeah.
So really it was utility and then kind of started from there. Yeah.
Thomas was really the one that took it from utilitarian to adventure. Mm-hmm. And Thomas is actually the reason I did the trip, because he had done his trip. He had come back, sort of recovered from it. And then I was having a conversation with him, and he basically said, I found this news article about this guy, Henry Crew, who was the last person to do the trip. Mm-hmm. Youngest person to go around the world on a motorcycle. And at the time, Crew was 23. He was 23, almost 24. And at the time, I was 20. So Thomas was like, you could totally do this. I'm too old to do it, but you could absolutely do it. So it's totally his fault. And
yeah, he could knock it out of the park at 20, 21 years old, whatever.
Yeah. But it was funny because before I left, he was like, Bridget, you can't die because it'll be my fault.
Like, no pressure.
Yeah.
No pressure. So it sounds like, I mean, A, you grew up kind of in a motorcycle family, but B, it sounds like your family, when they commit to doing something or they get into something, you're not like jumping in the shallow end really, or you're not like kind of towing your way into it.
No, not at all. This isn't something that comes up much, but you are correct. My family really does not care about pre-workout. They just go in. Like my brother Thomas is a great example of this. Mm-hmm. There's like a local Ironman competition.
Okay.
And every few years, like I think it happens every year, but last year he entered in it and no pre-training at all.
Really?
He entered into it wearing some cork boots, a kilt, and a button-up shirt, and he took third place. And these guys train like all year long.
Yeah, Ironman's no joke.
Yeah, and it's just a perfect example of things my family does, is we just don't seem to care, and we just jump headlong into things. Like before this trip, I hadn't left the U.S.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And decided that going around the world was the logical next step.
Well, I mean, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it big, you know? So,
yeah.
Where was the furthest you had traveled in the U.S. then, or the furthest you had traveled from home before decided to do the around the world?
Washington State. I worked previous to this trip, and sort of my start of adventures was I worked on a tall ship in Washington State for a summer and some change.
Cool.
And that was the furthest and the longest I had been away from home. Up until then, I think that was about 7.5 months. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, so Washington's, halfway across the country, and, I'm guessing the tall ship was out on like in the Sound and in the ocean and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a little more energetic than the Great Lakes, if you will.
Yes. But to be fair, to respect the Great Lakes are crazy because the water doesn't act the same way. And this is my real job is boats. So you've hit on something here, and I'm sorry, but you're going to have to listen to me rant. So the way the Great Lakes work is they don't really have tides, but they have something called seiche, which is like if you put a weight in one side of a bathtub, but like the other side goes up, and then the water sloshes back and forth. And so that can cause a bunch of like really unpredictable currents.
Sure. Yeah.
and it can really mess boats up. So in some ways, it's worse than the ocean.
Fair enough. Fair enough. The more you know. I have a good friend who is a motorcycle buddy of mine, and his other big thing is fly fishing out west in like Idaho, Montana, Washington, all that kind of stuff. So I'm no stranger to hearing about waterways, and he's been into rivers and stuff. So
Nice.
He actually, on a quick sidebar, he taught me about the driftless zone in Wisconsin.
Driftless zone.
So if you go from like past South Wisconsin and into like Western Wisconsin, that's where the glaciers didn't come through.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so much more hilly than the rest of Wisconsin.
Yep.
So
Wisconsin be pretty flat. Up here we have mountains.
Right. Yeah. Tall hills. But yeah, you've probably seen some actual mountains and ridden through some actual mountains by this point. So
yeah.
To get back to the trip, how did you even like start to plan for this? I mean, you have to plan for it because you're going across countries, you're going across oceans, you're going across, borders, and we're American. So sometimes that helps. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yes. So I will say the American passport is one of the most powerful passports in the world. There's a lot of people that really like us and a lot of people that really hate us. And there isn't a lot of neutral eyes on America. Yeah. Everybody has an opinion, it seems like. But planning for the trip, I think I planned it for almost, since I was from 20 to like 21 and a half, a little more than that.
Okay.
So a little more than a year and a half. I had planned originally to leave in May of 2022. And then I ended up leaving in obviously August because I completely changed my plan. Because originally I was planning going straight over to Europe first.
Okay.
And for reasons to do with the weather and other things, I decided to go south first because I had to go over 2 antipodal points and I had to cross the equator for the record. So the rules for the record are you have to go over 2 antipodal points, which are 2 points that directly oppose each other on the globe. So if you stuck a needle through Peru, it would come out in Thailand somewhere.
Makes sense.
And then the second one is you have to cross the equator at least once. You have to have the same bike the whole time. You can't stay in one place for more than 2 weeks. The journey has to be continuous in one general direction. I think there are some others, but that are less important. Anyway.
So those are the main ones, though,
Yeah. And you can't get arrested.
Oh, you can't?
No.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously. You can't break any laws. So I had to be really careful. I did manage not to, but you have to be really careful to not get arrested or get in trouble or anything.
So does that even count like a speeding ticket?
Maybe. I think it was any sort of breaking the rules that led to it was conviction. I don't remember if it was for fines too. I don't know how Guinness would know unless we told them, but I did manage not to do that. We did get pulled over once for speeding, but he let us go. So,
well, I mean, speeding is one of those like gray areas things where I feel like you probably could get away with 1 or 2, but like a reckless driving or whatever the equivalent is in that country would probably be a different story. So,
dude, reckless driving in some of these countries, it would have to be like, I don't know, riding around with a horse on the back of a moped erratically.
Yeah,
would be hard to do because I'm pretty sure they've done it.
Yeah, it's like some of the things that like either the memes online or sometimes you see people in different countries where they really use a motorcycle for their families.
They're real.
Yeah, they're exactly. Like you saw that in person and you probably like, did you do like a double take at all where it was like, this is really happening in front of my eyes right now?
There was a few times. After a while, it just becomes so normal that you don't see it. I mean, you do see it, but it's just like, okay, there's another 4 people on one motorcycle. There's another 5 people My favorite was when there would be like the father driving, and then there would be a child squished in between the father and mother, and all you would see is his little hands and legs poking out. Very secure.
Yeah. Safety first.
Yeah. But planning wise, there wasn't. The biggest planning was figuring out my route and where I needed to go, and then figuring out visas. So originally I had planned to go through Russia, which was the plan. I even got a Russian visa, a 4-year Russian visa. That was going to be the plan for, the Asian section of the world.
Sure.
Asia. But obviously that didn't end up working out, and I had to change my plan. Basically, it became very certain that I couldn't go through Russia while I was in Europe. So I did all of South America. And in Buenos Aires, Guinness basically told me you can't go through Russia.
Oh, wow. So it came from them, not from you.
Yeah, it did come from them. I was going through, I was like, let's go. And I have 2 friends, Lavi and Ollie. I'm pretty sure I'm saying both of their names wrong. I think I'm saying Lavi's name wrong. Anyway, they, as I was doing my record, were simultaneously doing a record for youngest pair to go around the world on a motorcycle.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And they had one bike. And they went through Russia while I was going through Asia. So it worked. They did it.
Yeah. Maybe it was like your brother, where it's like, hey, we don't want to be liable for anything to happen to you. So we're going to let you, we're going to have you go another way or whatever. So
that was exactly what it was. And they did not. I'm interested to see, because Lavi and Ollie were doing the Guinness record too. So I don't know, because Guinness never told them. They only told me because I was trying to get my route approved because it was, changing.
Right.
And they only told me because of that. So they never told them. They knew because I told them. But then they were like, they didn't tell us we're going. We can't change our route. It's not going to work.
We're already here, man. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I guess another question is, how did you you said your day job and your real life is kind of boats and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So how do you even start to put your real life, quote unquote, on hold for a year and a half, almost 2 years like that?
This is the kicker, is it's actually really easy with boats.
Okay. Because
boats, especially in the Midwest, and unless you're on the coast, even then, they're seasonal. So
good point. Yeah.
Oftentimes you have a contract, a 6 or 8 month contract, and you work for them for the summer, or maybe you do maintenance in the winter. But then you're off the hook, and you can either go and work on another boat, which is, they want people to go work. They want them to stay in this sort of shipping world, but they want them to go work on other boats because you get different experience and you can trade off crews, and it works pretty well. And that's how it used to work, is people would sign up for a contract. So for me, before I left, I worked on the Madeline Island Ferry. And that is a, full-time job. But because I work on other boats, I quit my job there. And now I just go back to work on a different boat. I can just sort of pick up where I left off and come back. Now, right now, I'm trying to get together the Guinness stuff and give everything to them in the way that they want it. They're very picky, so I'm trying to be careful and take my time. But hopefully I'll have that all done by April. But then in April, I'm planning on going back to working on boats.
On boats, yeah. So it sounds like really you just almost kind of make it a chapter, where it's like a chapter of your life. Like, this is where the start of it's going to be. And this is where about the end of it is going to be. And then we'll just kind of pick back up where we left off.
Yeah. And I think there is, now this is objective. This isn't objective because it's my personal experience.
Sure.
It's objective. It's not objective. And in my personal experience, it's easier because I'm younger and I don't have a family and I don't have all this stuff that I am responsible for. So I'm just responsible for myself. And it's easy at this point in my life to get and lose jobs that are capable of taking care of just me. If I was older, it would probably be a lot harder to have a job, like get a good job and then want to go on a trip because they might not hire me back. Might not be able to find a better or the same quality job when I came back. So that is something to think about. But if it's just you, it's super easy. You just have to be a little creative in your career.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine that, whether like, in your career, that's got to be kind of an interesting point of conversation, at least,
Yeah. I mean, it isn't something that a lot of people do. Tall ships. And I'll clarify what I mean by tall ships. I'm not sure how familiar you are. So this is always, I never like this comparison, but it's always the one I make. So have you ever seen the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie?
Sure have.
Okay. So the ship that Johnny Depp and Orlando Bloom steal, the Interceptor, like in the first part of the movie? That ship is actually called the Lady Washington. It is a real boat.
Oh, cool.
And it is the boat that I first worked on. And that is what tall ships is these sort of, not antique, but older style vessels. Like she's no more than 50 years old. Wow. And there's tons of other boats that are either newer or there's some that are, OG that are original, but those don't often work as hard because they're very old.
Right. A little more fragile.
Yeah. But they're primarily, there's basically two categories. There's the education category, which takes out like the public or school trips or goes on voyages and they take people and they learn about either the history of the boats or they learn about, the ocean and the wildlife in it.
Yeah, like experiential learning kind of thing.
Exactly, which is really cool. Or
for sure.
There's like the Windjammer fleet, which is primarily sort of, breakfast cruises. It takes people out on a bay or the ocean. Right. And it's more of for funsies. But it's the people that you meet, they cross over a lot and they're really cool and you get to be outside on the water all the time. And I really love it. So,
yeah, no, it sounds like it. I mean, almost like you were uniquely qualified to do this trip because of what your kind of day job and career is. And also like your age I feel like us younger people kind of get, oh, you're too young to do this or you won't understand or whatever. But I feel like it almost helped you probably in that, you're 22 years old, 23 years old at the time.
Yeah.
You almost like don't know what to worry about.
Exactly. And so Kiva, who is currently my roommate and also my best friend. And we were talking about this the other day is because the ignorance of not knowing something is impossible makes it a lot easier to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's, I feel like, what happened to me. And because I had traveled a little bit from 2019 up until I left. But before that, I was a homeschooled farm kid. I didn't do anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So homeschooled, rural Wisconsin town.
Not even, dude, we are 20 minutes away from the nearest town.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
This is not rural. I don't know. I guess it is.
You're out there though.
I am out there. We are out of there.
Yeah.
And the farm it's like 140 acres. It's a pretty big farm. And it was, a functioning farm. Now, the kids have moved away and the animals are pretty much gone. But when I was growing up, and even before I left, there was still cattle here. Like it was a real farm. So that was happening. But, because I hadn't done it in that way before, all that I knew was I wanted to do it. And I knew it was going to be hard, but I had done hard things before. So it was just, why not?
Yeah, well, and it's like I said, you don't really know, as you get older, I feel like it's almost like, oh, well, this could go wrong, this could go wrong, this could go wrong. But, before you start to worry about all that jazz, you're like, oh, this is going to, like, the fun outweighs the potential risks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just going to be fun all the time. You know what I mean? And I know yours wasn't necessarily fun all the time, but when you're in front of it, it's like, you know, this is going to be super cool and there's going to be no problems at all.
Yes. And I often joke about this with my friends. Are you familiar with Paul Terrace?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so Paul Terrace I believe he's Spanish. He's from Spain. But he has this, what is it? Is it KTM? No, it's not KTM. It's the T7. But it's not really a T7 anymore because it's been modded to hell. But he's one of those guys that has like a bunch of contracts, and he's like an amazing racer, like one of the best in the world.
Okay.
And the joke to me is to do the sort of things that like Paul Terrace does, or the sort of things, I'm not putting myself in the same category as him, just to be clear. You have to be just a little dumb because really smart people realize the risks, care about their life enough to not do it.
Right.
But you have to allow yourself to get hurt and to have the risk to accomplish these things and to get better. Because if you're always being safe, you're not going to go as far as you want to go. Assuming that's how far you want to go. To get really incredibly good at something, you have to be willing to get hurt. Probably really badly. And so that's why smart people don't do it.
Well, I'm gonna argue a little bit, and I'm gonna say not dumb, but I'm gonna say naive. I think there's a certain naivete where you know, I know that I've experienced that where it's like, it's going to be fine. It's no big deal. It's almost like, what is it, main character syndrome, where it's like, well, nothing's going to happen to me. Everything's fine, you know?
Yeah.
But also to make a nautical reference, it's what's the quote? It's ships are safe in the harbor, but that's not what ships are built for.
Exactly. That's good. I like that. And, you know, I think I personally view not as dumb, but just sort of like, okay, Kiva is an incredibly intelligent person, and she thinks about things, and she like assesses risks, and that really affects, especially when we were first starting, it really affected her motorcycling, because you have to, like going on sand, you have to go fast if you want to stay upright. And if you're cautious, you're going to fall over. But when you go faster, that risk level goes up. So it's either maybe you learn very slowly and you fall over a bunch, but it's not a big deal, or you learn very quickly.
Well, let's during your trip, did you get injured at all? I mean, you did.
Oh yeah, a bunch.
Like, not severely enough for like a hospital visit or anything, right? Or maybe.
I don't think it was that bad. I had 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 3, 4 major injuries. So the first one, we were in Colombia, and Kiva's bike had fallen over on the kickstand side, and we were on this road called it wasn't the Devil's Trampoline in Colombia. It's this very famous road. Okay. And there was a bunch of trucks backed up behind us, so I was trying to lift it up just enough to get the kickstand down, so we could pick it up, because it was on the downhill side. So it was complicated. Completely threw out my back. Oof. I think I slipped at least one disc. I heard 3 pops, and all of a sudden it just hurt so bad. And so that was the first injury, and that was it hurt so bad, and like down my left leg, it was like really numb, and there would be this like shooting pain all the time. And I couldn't sit, and I had to like stand up on my motorcycle the whole time. And it still hurts. It's still quite stiff in the morning.
Really?
Yeah.
Yikes.
And then in Peru, me and Kiva had separated because there was another person that she was riding with for a minute, just like the day, I think, or 2 days. And there was a mountain pass in Peru. It's on the 106 and the 107. And I've mentioned this before in many a podcast, but it's this really beautiful road. It's in a national park that I don't remember the name of, but it's up in the mountains. Really gorgeous. But I was, having fun by myself, and like we were saying, risk assessment, I wanted to go faster because, I was by myself. I was like, yeah, let's go.
Just rolling, yeah.
And I crashed.
Oh, no.
Not super badly. I think it was like, I don't know, 20, 25 miles per hour. But I landed on my left side and my foot got caught on the ground and my leg got twisted around by my foot, and it really messed up my knee. And that was the leg that was already being bothered by my back.
Yeah.
And then right after that, I think it was like a month after that, we were in Chile, and in Santiago, I got hit by a car.
Tell me, is it on your left side or your right side?
No, it was on my right side.
Okay, good. We're at least even things out.
Yeah, and I did get a mild concussion from that, and it's a nice little scrape on the arm. But that was the biggest things. After South America, I did get a little more cautious.
Well, let's talk about the actual trip so we can kind of visualize. So you started from Wisconsin, correct? Yeah. And to kind of lead me, and we can do the Reader's Digest version. You don't have to tell me every country and city.
That's good, because there's a lot.
Yeah. Tell me kind of the line, the Indiana Jones line.
Ooh, I like that. I should watch those movies again. Anyway, okay, so northern Wisconsin, as north as you can get, and then I sort of came down, went to Colorado, went to Utah for a second, went back to Colorado. There's an event called the Overland Expo.
Oh, cool.
And I went there, met some people. That was really important because I met a lot of travelers, and that helped me quite a bit, just figuring out what I pretty much didn't need to know. But, they helped me know what I didn't need to care about. But anyway, moving on. Yeah. And then I went up to Washington, love Washington. And then I went down the coast, and we went into Baja. So me and Kiva was my riding partner for South America. And we met up in Baja. We did Baja. We went over to mainland Mexico, went down Mexico City, blah, 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 through Central America, we shipped our bikes from Panama to Colombia.
Okay.
And then went down the western side of South America. And I will get to countries in this area. So Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Chile. Bolivia, Argentina, Chile. And then all the way down to Ushuaia, Argentina, which is the furthest south pretty much you can get by road.
Okay.
And then came back up to Buenos Aires, Argentina, which is one of the furthest north cities in Argentina. And then I went to Spain. Kiva stayed behind for a little bit, and we met up again in Europe. But Spain, and then France, the UK, Ireland. I spent almost 2 weeks in Ireland doing the Wild Atlantic Way, which is the west half of Ireland, which is super awesome.
That's on a bucket list of mine. So
it was on my bucket list too. That was one of the countries it was the country that I had wanted to go through.
Really?
Pretty much my whole life. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because my heritage is from there. So I was like, I want to go see. But it was,
yeah,
it was amazing. And then I came over into Scotland for like a day. And then I went down back through the UK, fixed my crash bars, which had been decimated in South America. Went back to France, pretty much directly to Netherlands, Luxembourg,
Oh, it's one of those micro countries.
Yeah, it was one of the micro countries. And then to Germany, and then I went up into Norway and Sweden, came back down to Italy, and then went immediately east. Bulgaria, there's an event called Motor Camp Bulgaria. It's not an Overland Expo. Horizons Unlimited, which people will be familiar with that. And then it was a Horizons Unlimited event. Went down Turkey, and then Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Oman, UAE, Iran, Pakistan, India, Nepal, and then I skipped a few countries because Myanmar, their land border with India is closed, so I couldn't ride across there. And then I went Thailand, Malaysia, shipped the bike back to Vancouver, and then went home.
You make it sound so easy, Bridget.
I know.
That was it? That was no big deal.
It only took me like 3 minutes to explain.
Well, I mean, you covered so much. I mean, you talk about, I mean, I don't want to say everybody, but a lot of people are familiar with Europe, UK, England, France, Germany, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then once you kind of get farther east, like the Middle East probably has a lot of people, thinking, oh man, that was probably a sketchy time. Was it?
Yeah.
Was that complete BS, or were you sketched out at all, or was it pretty smooth sailing?
For the most part, it was pretty smooth sailing. The part, it was in the Middle East itself, which I think ends at Iran. I think once you get past into like Pakistan, that's considered Asia. I was only in Iran for 5 days, and I was in the south, which is kind of the more sketchy area for a Westerner. Sure. And that did sketch me out a little bit because I had to have a guide the whole time. And he was always really worried about me getting kidnapped, the secret police. And there was definitely once, I think one of the few times on the trips that I was followed by someone, and they tried to stop me. And I was just like, nope. And I kept going.
Boom, see ya. Yeah.
Yep. I was like, no, thank you.
Yikes.
But yeah, that was a little sketchy. And then southern Pakistan was an ordeal of epic proportions.
How so?
So you come in across the Taftan border, which is the border that links up with Iran, and from there till whatever point they decide farther north, you have to have an escort by, they're called the levies, which is basically the police force. And it's to protect you. And I do think in some cases it's absolutely necessary, because I think as Westerners we would get ourselves into trouble pretty quickly. Okay. But you go up with the levies and they switch out with each other a whole bunch.
Gotcha. Like a relay kind of?
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes they go really fast. Sometimes they go really slow. It's always very difficult to communicate with them because pretty much all of them speak a few words of English. Okay. But it's really difficult, and you have to be very firm with them. You have to be like, I need gas now. I need food now. Because the communication is not there. So you have to either non-verbally communicate with them. A lot of motorcyclists had trouble with them, and they were like, these guys are terrible, blah, 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 blah. And they're really, being a woman, it is very different because...
Oh, for sure.
They do deal with you differently. For me, I was just very clear. Like, if I needed gas, I would pull alongside them and be like, my tank. Like, I need gas.
Just direct,
need to stop. Yeah. Or I would just stop.
Actions do speak louder than words, yeah.
They do. But southern Pakistan, it's the furthest thing from developed. And it is, like, the culture there is very rich. There's a lot going on. But the people there are not used to seeing Westerners. And when they do see them, they're with the levies. And if like we stopped, there would immediately be a crowd of people around.
Really?
And they just stare at you. And they don't blink because they're not used to seeing Westerners at all. So they just stare at you. And the men there are very, very forward.
Oh,
and
God.
like even the levies, I could not give my phone number to any of them because they would ask for official reasons.
Sure.
And then they would immediately be sending you messages like, I love you, please marry me, blah, blah, blah. And it was just like, it was exhausting. It was super hot.
Yeah.
And just before I had gone there in the Middle East, I had gone through, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, some of the hottest places in the world in August. Because I had planned to be in Russia in August.
Right.
Which would have been perfect. But there was a few days in Iraq that it was 130 degrees.
Oh my God.
Which is, you can cook bread.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
I was cooking like a little loaf of bread.
You could probably fry an egg on the sidewalk or on your gas tank or sidewalk. I mean, like the road, so how do you like stay cool during that? I mean, are you just like down in gallons of water every time you stop or?
It was really hard to eat because I didn't want to eat. I just wanted to drink water all the time. Mm-hmm. I didn't know I could drink so much water or that I could sweat so much.
Sure.
But yeah, I just drink a ton of water. Everything is set up to accommodate it being ungodly hot. They're used to it.
Yeah.
There's, service stations. They have refrigerated water. That's okay.
Yeah.
So I would stop and I would get typically, 1 or 2 liters of water like every time.
Oh, for sure.
And I would drink a lot of water. I had water on my back, so I'd fill that up. And if they had ice, I'd put that in there. That was the best.
Smart, yeah.
Yeah. And then I would just dump it over my head and I would soak myself in water. Mm-hmm. Because when you're riding, it's like an air conditioning system.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was how I survived. Now in Kuwait, it was so humid there that it didn't work. And Kuwait was really rough. And when I came into Saudi Arabia, I left Iraq at 8 a.m. And then I went through Kuwait and straight to Riyadh, which is like in the middle of Saudi Arabia. So I crossed the desert, but I did it basically overnight. So it took me most of the day to get across. Kuwait's a pretty small country. Mm-hmm. Most of the day to get across there. And then in Saudi Arabia during the night and crossing the desert during the night because it was just so unbelievably hot. So I think I got to Riyadh 4 a.m. the next day.
Overnight. But I mean, if you had done it during the day, it probably would have been even hotter and, just unbearable.
Yeah.
And more unbearable than it was.
And I was getting used to it. When I left Riyadh, I left really early in the morning. I think I left at like 4 a.m. But then I went over the desert in the day and it was so hot. And that section of the desert from Riyadh to Oman, there is nothing. I think it's every 200 miles, there is a truck stop in the middle of the desert. And it's not like Quick Trip. Okay, it's not like a Midwestern.
It's not like a Quick Trip or a Buc-ee's or a...
No.
Yeah.
It's like you see it off. Sometimes they're pretty far off the desert road because there's old roads that used to go through the deserts and they don't, something happens to them. They just build a new road.
Okay.
So there's
they don't
all
maintain,
these, yeah, it's funny because there are these roads that just go off into the middle of the desert to nothing.
Yikes.
But it would be sort of this sand road. And so you'd be driving through sand because the only people that go on these roads are giant trucks.
Okay, yeah.
But you'd go out and they would have petrol and they would have water. And you needed both, and that's what you did. So it was, you had to stop every time you saw them. It was either you stop there or you are stuck in the desert.
That's smart, though. I mean, I'm glad that, it's nice to know that there is some accommodation that way,
I
almost, because part of me pictured, Joshua Tree National Park in California, where it's like, there's the north and then the south, and there's not too terribly much in between if you drive straight through, except at the beginning, there's a sign that says, "Don't die today."
Yeah. No,
and that's about it. So
there are some of these places. The most remote places I think I went through was the desert, and starting in South America. So like Argentina, when you get down on the Route of 40, it's similar to the desert. There's like every 300 kilometers ish, there's a gas station or something, but there's nothing in between. It's just scrubland. But even that's a little better. And then Saudi Arabia, is huge, and there's pretty much just desert and camels. And then in Pakistan, in that southern part, there is nothing.
Except crowds of people.
Yeah. Well, because you would get into the towns. Once you got to the civilized area, there was only people. It was like constantly going through a town. But there are either thousands of people or no one.
Wow. It kind of reminds me of this quote that I heard you say. It was on, I think, your homecoming video, that you said, like, somebody basically coming into your front room and taking a picture of you is like kind of, and then saying that that's what America is all the time, everywhere.
Yeah.
It's kind of how people paint the world with such a broad brush. What kind of misconceptions did you discover about the world that were, that maybe us Americans have it wrong about, or maybe something that kind of pleasantly surprised you that you had a misconception about, anywhere in your journey? I'm sure there was more than one, but.
Yeah, I think the most pleasant surprise I had was that pretty much everyone is nice.
That's good.
The mean or the manipulative people in the world are a lot fewer and far between than the good people. Like, with the internet and I don't know, our day-to-day lives, I feel like we don't get a chance to test how people would react to us basically coming to their door and asking for help. And when you're doing the sort of things that I did, it's pretty much constantly what you're doing is you are at the mercy of the goodwill of people around you. And people will surprise you, and they're very kind to travelers most of the time. Now, with that said, we did get robbed, but that was one occurrence.
Okay.
And then immediately after that, the whole the motorcycle community really lifted us up and set us on our way better off than we were beforehand. So it's really easy to see the tiger in the bush and think it's there all the time, but to realize that there's really not a lot there. As far as misconceptions, in America, we are taught that America is safe and everywhere else is dangerous. And to be perfectly honest, America is one of the more dangerous countries.
Really?
It is, just passively, because, with all these freedoms that we have the freedom to basically mess each other up. And now that is true in all places. Like, there's you go into a city in any country and there's probably places that you shouldn't go. But
sure.
There are a lot of these countries' cultures that one of their fundamental beliefs is being kind to travelers, being hospitable. And I don't think we get that as much in America. But I like that quote that you quoted of mine, because it is super true, because on the news and other places, you're only seeing this keyhole view of what other people look like. And even what I didn't get to see much for long. But it's so different from what I thought it would be. And I think in the biggest way, is when I started, I was very suspicious of people. And I think that really affected how people felt about me. Because me and Kiva talk about this, it's like, if you come into it thinking it's going to be a certain way, that's what you're going to find. That's just how it works. If you come into it and you think all the police are corrupt and they're going to rob you, they are.
Yeah.
And, that it's not armor. It's not going to protect you always. Your positivity isn't going to protect you always. You are going to find situations that comes true in, but I think it happens a lot less. And I'm not sure if it happened to us less because we were women and because people wanted to take care of us because we were women. And that's very possible. But I do think a lot of it is because to the people we met, we were as accommodating and as respectful as we could possibly be. And I think that worked very well for us.
Yeah. I mean, a little bit of kindness went a long way.
It goes a huge way. And this is one of the things that frustrates me the most, is that a lot of travelers, especially when they're first starting out, all they have is their own reference to their own country. So when something works differently, they will be insulted by it. And they're like, in my country, this is not the way this works. Like, here's a really small example. When I was in Paris, I was at this little pastry shop. And the waiter, the cashier spoke English. But she said, would you like that for takeaway or for here? And the guy, I think he was from America. And he was confused by that. And so he said, in America, we say take out, not takeaway. So you might want to keep that in mind.
Oh, geez.
And yeah, well, it's just like, that's not the way my country works. That's not the way my mind works. You need to change for me because it makes me uncomfortable. That is not how travel works. In my mind, to be fair, this is all my perspective.
I 100% agree with you.
But you are a guest. And you are not only a guest in their country, but you are representing your country. It doesn't matter if you don't agree with everything that happens in whatever country that you're from. You are what they see as your country.
Yeah, they're that snapshot, or you are that snapshot.
Exactly. You are the snapshot of your own country. And you can either make them be more open to visitors coming in, or you can make them be much more closed off. And I wouldn't say it's a duty. I think about it as an obligation to just make life easier for everyone else, because it's not hard.
No, yeah.
And I do think part of that is learning not to take things personally and just letting your mind sort of bend and around these things and not try and pick them apart and not compare them to your own experiences in your own country, because they're completely different. But it's a pet peeve.
I feel you. Yeah. So the first time I went to Europe, I was right out of college. I've only been twice. I'll just qualify that. But the first time I went, I had this thought like halfway through, because I was almost kind of like that. I mean, I didn't say anything to anybody like, oh, well, this is how we do it in America. But
yeah.
I remember I had this thought in my head was, there's more than one right way to do things.
Yes.
And that's always stuck with me. So whenever I travel anywhere, that's always in the back of my head, and just how they do it works for them. It's got them this far, for the most part. And so let's just, assimilate a little bit.
Yeah. And I really think that's something that the Western world really struggles with, and something that I realize I struggle with personally, and something that changed a lot for how I think about the world. I think this is one of the biggest things that I changed is letting people do things their own way and not, because when you think something's wrong, it might not feel like you're taking it personally. But for me, it was like I was taking it personally. You are doing that wrong. That is not the way it works. That's dumb. It will work better this way.
Yeah.
But there are reasons that it works that way. And maybe they don't have the time to sit there and explain it to you why this is the way it is. But if you try and tell them that they're wrong or dismantle it or change their culture or whatever, it normally doesn't work, or it's normally very detrimental.
Yeah, it doesn't do anybody any good.
No.
So, so talking about kind of change over the course of the trip and everything, how did it feel to get off that bike for not the last time, but the last time for that trip when you got home?
It felt really nice. My butt was sore.
Tired, sore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the actual feelings were just like literally up until I went, because I started from my brother's house, and one of the rules is you have to start and end from the same place.
Okay.
So literally up until I drove up to my brother's house, I just kept thinking, like, what if I don't make it? What if a deer comes out in front of me and I go kasplat or something else happened? I was just so anxious, especially on that last stretch.
Sure.
And then to get there, and then my family was there and all my friends were there. There was a bunch of people that showed up for my little coming home party. And it was just this sense of relief.
Mm-hmm.
That it was very strange that I didn't have to think about, the next place I was going or the next place I needed to sleep or the next country I needed to get a visa for or whatever. And it was a big weight off my shoulders. I enjoyed the trip and it taught me a lot, but it was very stressful. I didn't get to stop in one place for more than 2 weeks. I think I only got close to that limit twice.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, it wasn't the greatest way to travel sustainably. And I was burnt out. I'm still burnt out. And that was like, you emailed me like right after, and I just did not respond.
Yeah, no, and I totally respected it. I'm like, I can't imagine, because we were talking earlier, you came home to a lot of fanfare. I mean, I think you were on at least the local news, if not,
yeah, there was
probably a regional or national news. And I mean, just all this attention on, again, a Midwest 11, in terms of attention and accomplishment and all that kind of stuff. So I can imagine that was probably pretty overwhelming.
It was, and it was sort of immediately afterwards. It was kind of like there was immediately after coming back, and like the next few days were sort of like, okay, wrapping up, blah, blah, blah. And then sort of basically the next month afterwards, it was sort of, I didn't realize how much I was so focused on being done. I didn't realize that I wouldn't actually be done. And then I didn't think about everything that came afterwards, like all the people that wanted to know, like interviews and stuff, but also wrapping up with Guinness. And like, I didn't realize the trip would follow me so much.
Sure. Yeah, the shadow of it, yeah.
Because I never intended for this to be my career or something that would be really long term. Mm-hmm. It was a goal, it was a mission. And then I wanted to sort of do the mission and then be done and move on. But it's not that simple for many reasons, part of which is I feel an obligation to all the people that supported me on the trip. And like a lot of my trip was crowdfunded, and I couldn't have afforded to go through Asia
Mm-hmm.
the way I was going, and I didn't have, a remote job, and I'm not young enough to have, saved up enough. I did save up quite a bit of income before, but the only reason, and this is the only reason any big trip happens, is because the people around you choose to support you, and
Mm-hmm.
you can't do something like this on your own, not even a little bit. And anybody who tells you otherwise is either lying or very self-involved. And I stand by that objectively. Like, you cannot do this sort of thing on your own,
Mm-hmm.
not even a little bit. And you might be able to come pretty close, but it's going to be type 4 fun doesn't come close to what that would be like. Jesus.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you are kind of, I don't want to say a poster child, but definitely a figure and I want to say in the new generation of motorcyclists. And you said something on your website about showing the world to a degree about being in that new generation of motorcyclists that doesn't just want to see something from a bubble of a car.
Yeah.
What do you think, makes this, and I'm going to put myself into that too as well, but
okay.
just selfishly speaking, but what do you think kind of makes that new generation of motorcyclists different than before?
This is a great question. I like this. Okay. So I think what I'm seeing in the new generation is something that was around when motorcycling first started. And before all of this, like the polished stuff came out and all the kit came out and all of that. Now, with that said, I had great kit. I had great sponsors and I had great stuff. And that does make it easier, but it's not even close to being required. And I think what I'm seeing in like the friends that I have, the few and far between, but the good ones that are my age, is we don't care. We don't care if we have, the biggest motorcycle or the signage kit. We just want to go out and, explore and look under rocks and see what's there. And it's not like a status symbol. It's a vehicle for adventure. And I think that's really good. And like the motorcycle industry itself, I think, is steering away from these really big displacement bikes. And like, I think you and Charlie really set this off. If anyone's familiar with long way round or down or up or whichever direction they decided to go, like they had these, don't get me wrong, the BMWs, amazing motorcycles, really very eloquent, but they're just tanks. Yeah. At the end of the day, they're just huge. And if you are a really good motorcyclist, you can flip that thing around and you can do really great stuff with it. But if you don't know what you're doing, I'm pointing to myself, by the way, you can't. Mm-hmm. And it's expensive. It weighs you down. And so to have something like my motorcycle, I had a Kawasaki Versys X300, which is a small displacement adventure bike. And it's not the best on the market. And it's not the most efficient. It's like a multi-tool. It's the worst tool for every job, but it manages to do every job. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing is you take what you have, and it might not be the most comfortable, but by God, it works. And by God, I had a great time. Yeah. 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 I think you're right. And I'm hopeful for that it's not about the glitz and the glam and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just about the adventure. I mean, so I have 3 motorcycles. I have a 1200, a 900, and then a 400. Mm-hmm. And the 400 is an old 79 Honda. And I still feel that like that's the most fun to ride. Yeah. I don't know what it is. I can't eloquate it, but it feels like the most motorcycle-y motorcycle. Yes. Well, and it's not for everybody, but I think the reason that these small bikes are more fun is they can it's easier to make them do more. And you feel it when it happens. It's the same reason we ride motorcycles. We don't personally, I don't ride a motorcycle because it's always the most comfortable way to do things, or it's always, the easiest. I don't do it because it's easy.
Right.
I do it because it's engaging, it's fun, it's challenging. I feel like I'm doing something worth doing. I don't feel like the machine is doing it for me, which is like the BMW. It's a great motorcycle because it does work for you. It has a really low center of gravity, and it's doing a lot of the work for you. But on these smaller bikes, like, you are doing the work, and you are part of the vehicle, and you're making it happen. And I just love that. And also the community, like, it's not like we're running around showing each other up. We're helping each other. And that's like the core of the motorcycling world, is we're all these people that are crazy enough to ride around on this thing with 2 wheels and no seatbelt, and we have all this extra gear that we have to put on, and it takes hours to do it and all this, but it's, we do it because we love it.
Yeah, man, preach. There's nothing like it.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I will be here all week.
No, this is great, man. So I guess 2 more questions.
Okay.
One, we kind of talked about it a little bit in that you can't do it yourself, but do you have any advice or tips, just like quick hit lightning round pro tips of, like, if somebody just wants to take even just a long trip, maybe across something pedestrian, like a cross country trip, or instead of around the world, or, maybe just to South America. What kind of advice or tips or things that you learned along the way that you'd be willing to share?
Okay. So, as fast as I can, I recommend doing at least a 3-day camping trip beforehand. It doesn't matter if you go far. Take whatever gear that you think you will need for the whole trip, everything on that trip. And that is like a shakedown. And that will tell you, I don't need 3 extra poop scoopers to get this done. And oftentimes you don't need extras. Unless you're going into the middle of Mongolia, you don't need 3 of one thing, and you don't need to carry around a lot of extra parts, because most of the time you're going to be on a road, and someone's going to come around on that road sometime. You might have to be a little patient, but you'll be fine. And I think the biggest thing is, most of the time you'll be fine. I would advise, if you are going to remote areas, have some sort of satellite something, even if it's just an SOS button, that all it does is send a text to someone. Like the Garmin Mini is a good one.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And don't take a lot of food unless you're going super, super remote, which you probably aren't. I know it looks like you are, but you probably aren't, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. You'd really get along with my friend Danny. I'll name drop him. He's
Danny.
Him and I took a trip to Yellowstone together on a motorcycle. I lived in Idaho for a little while, so we, it was a quick trip and all that. But he really pushed. Like I said, I'm from the suburbs of Chicago, and he's been all over, done a bunch of stuff, and he pushed me more into doing like multi-day backtracking trips, being outside and all that kind of stuff. And one time I cut my foot or something, and it wasn't that big of a deal. And I was like, I don't know, like, you might get infected or whatever, blah, blah. He looks at me dead in the eyes. He goes, dude, you're not going to die. And that's always stuck out at me. And that's, I'm hearing you say the same thing, just in different words. Just, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, no, you are. That's the thing. It's like, you absolutely will be fine. And once you might get into some hairy situations, but once you get out of it, the next one is not going to be nearly as bad, because you would have known, like, I can survive this. There was something else I was going to say. Darn it. It was good too.
That's okay. We'll just have to have you on again, and we can talk more about it. So
well, there you go.
My last question, though, and I think I already know the answer, but if you had to go back and do it all over again, would you?
Yes, 100%. Now, would I do it in the same way? Hopefully not. But I absolutely would. If I was doing a big trip like this again. Oh, I remembered what it was.
Go for it.
Edit? Okay, so
by all means.
Feel free, if you're going on a bigger trip, feel free to plan things for you to do and like plan places for you to go, but leave time open. Don't like, if you have no other option, feel free to stack on the miles, but you're just going to be tired and it's not going to be as much fun. Leave time open either to rest or to stop at the side of the road. Like maybe you stop by, like you riding past a cafe and there's a bunch of other motorcyclists there and you want to go say hi. Leave time to be spontaneous. Have a theme, but leave some time. Also, another really important thing is take care of yourself. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Make sure you're getting enough food, because that will determine immediately how much you're enjoying your trip. Because if you're even a little bit tired, it affects everything. And just take care of yourself and you'll have so much more fun.
I love it.
What was the question again?
Just if you had to do it again, or you could do it again, would you do it again?
Yeah. Okay. If I did it again, I would plan to do it in sections. And I think I would have, I might ship a bike over. So I would either have buy a bike in the country, ride around with it, sell the bike when I left, or find a friend there and use the bike. But I would do it in sections, like maybe 3-month, 4-month sections, and then go home for a little bit, recharge, let it become novel again, and come back. Because when you're doing it like right after another, there is only so many beautiful, majestic, breathtaking, awe-inspiring mountains you see before they come normal.
They're just mountains, though. Yeah.
They're just mountains. Just pointy rocks. Just a lot of pointy rocks and llamas around here.
Yeah, over it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I lied. I'm going to ask just one last, question to wrap it all up. So when you're back in your real life, you're getting back into the boats thing. I assume you're going to be still a motorcyclist. Doesn't sound like that's going to change. But are you like doing the dishes or like cutting the grass or going grocery shopping? And
the dishes are right there.
There we go. Are you like kind of doing these, what we'd call like mundane everyday tasks, and it just hits you like, holy shit, I ran around, I rode around the world.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. And it freaks me out sometimes because I'll be doing the most mundane things. And then I realize, like, I went around the world on a motorcycle. I'm 23 and I went around the world on a motorcycle. Oh my God. That's so cool.
It's like some weird fever dream, it feels like, or something, right?
It is. And it really is. Like I just went from 0 to 1,000, and it is really weird to think about that. Because like you said, I'm back. It's normal. It's it's mundane again. So it's very strange to think about the thing that I did, and I did do it. Kiva's here. It's real,
right?
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. I think that even if you never did a big trip ever again, I think you're one of the coolest motorcyclists out there.
Aw, thanks.
So, and as a fellow Midwesterner, don't discount the Midwesterners and don't discount the small town folks, man. Yeah.
Dude, some of the people here are scrappy.
Yeah, you can do a lot. And sometimes you have to do a lot with a little. So,
I think that's the thing that sets us apart from a lot of people is because we're isolated, we work with what we got. And I think that's a great system.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, well, Bridget, thank you so much for this awesome conversation. This has been one of my favorites. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure.
So maybe I can make a trip up to the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin.
Hey, there you go. I come down to Chicago sometime, so we'll see.
Cool, man. Yeah, well, just send me a message. But no, I appreciate it, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. See ya.
All right, thanks.